In a cold detention cell thousands of miles from home, a man sat staring at a photograph of his wife and 2 young children. It was the only possession they had allowed him to keep. Outside, lawyers from 3 different countries were fighting over who had the right to destroy what remained of his life. After 6 years of hunting shadows through the digital underworld, they finally had their target. But the journey to this moment had been anything but straightforward. 4 years earlier, the largest cryptocurrency exchange on Earth simply vanished overnight. 744,000 Bitcoin gone without a trace. Today, it would be worth over $80.3 billion. Hundreds of thousands of investors watched their life savings disappear into the digital void, and the world demanded answers. The exchange's young CEO became an immediate suspect, but while investigators focused on him, something far more dangerous was operating in the shadows. A mysterious platform was quietly processing billions in stolen cryptocurrency, run by ghosts who seemed completely untouchable. Then came the breakthrough that changed everything. Federal agents investigating the dark web made a shocking discovery. 2 of their own colleagues were secretly moving stolen funds through this same shadow network. What started as an internal corruption case would blow the lid off the entire operation. The perfect criminal had made one fatal mistake. In a moment of pure rage, he posted a single screenshot on a Bitcoin forum. One tiny overlooked detail in that image would trigger an international manhunt spanning 3 continents and ending on a sun-soaked beach thousands of miles away. This is the story of how trading cards became digital gold, how the world's biggest Bitcoin exchange became a criminal empire, and how a single vacation brought down the most elusive hacker in cryptocurrency history. The story begins in 2010, 3 blocks from Tokyo's neon-soaked Shibuya district. Jed McCaleb was running a quirky website called Mt. Gox. The name stood for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange, a place where players traded digital cards for the fantasy game. Back then, the site's biggest concern was helping teenagers swap rare dragons and lightning bolts. Bitcoin was worth 4 cents. The entire global community consisted of about 2,000 programmers trading coins through forum messages like digital pen pals. Most people had never heard of cryptocurrency. Those who had probably thought it was some kind of elaborate joke. The whole way I made Mt. Gox was just kind of on a lark, almost, just because I wanted to learn more about how Bitcoin worked, Jed would recall years later. I didn't want to go think of another name or go buy one. What started as a weekend hobby quickly became the beating heart of Bitcoin's early economy. Every serious transaction flowed through his makeshift exchange. When someone wanted to convert their digital coins into real dollars, they came to Mt. Gox. It was the only bridge between the digital and physical worlds. The problem was simple. Jed had built a race car with bicycle brakes. As Bitcoin's price climbed from 4 cents to 30 cents to over $1, his simple trading platform began cracking under pressure. The code wasn't designed for real money. It wasn't designed for anything beyond a few dozen card traders. I definitely didn't think that we would ever have a huge percentage of Bitcoin in the world on there, he would admit, with the kind of regret that only comes from watching your creation become a monster. The first hack came swiftly, slicing through Jed's defenses like a hot knife through butter. Someone exploited a vulnerability in the PayPal integration and drained $50,000 from the exchange. For most people, this would have been a wake-up call to improve security, hire professionals, maybe even shut down and start over. Instead, Jed decided to sell the entire operation. He was done playing with fire. He needed to find someone willing to take over the burning building. What happened next would haunt him for the rest of his life. Mark Kapiles was debugging PHP code in his small Tokyo apartment when destiny knocked on his digital door. The French developer had been running a modest web hosting company, the kind of business that paid the bills but would never make him rich. His entire operation generated roughly $30,000 a year, while Mt. Gox was projected to earn over $100,000 annually. Then, Jed made an offer that seemed too good to be true. Mt. Gox for 0 upfront payment. They would split revenue for 6 months, then Jed would keep a 12% stake forever. It was the deal of a lifetime, handed to him on a silver platter. There was just one catch. Mark would inherit the exchange along with its $50,000 debt from the recent hack. But even that seemed manageable. After all, how hard could it be to run a Bitcoin exchange? The handover began in February 2011, with both men working side by side to transfer control of the platform. For 2 weeks, they shared access to Mt. Gox's servers, while Mark learned the system. Everything seemed routine, almost boring, just two programmers passing digital keys from one to another. Then something appeared in the Bitcoin wallet logs that made Jed's blood run cold. 80,000 coins had been transferred to an external address during the night. Someone had stolen nearly a third of all customer deposits during the transition. The theft logs had been completely wiped. No IP addresses, no timestamps, no digital fingerprints. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. So we both had control, Jed would remember, his voice heavy with the weight of what came next. It was during the handover, but the site already belonged to him. Mark faced an impossible choice that would define the rest of his life: shut down Mt. Gox and destroy Bitcoin's fragile ecosystem, or find a way to cover the missing coins and keep the exchange running. The decision he made seemed logical at the time. After all, Bitcoin was still experimental. The community was small. Surely they could fix this quietly and move on. My best shot was just to listen to his advice. Mark would reflect on Jed's suggestion to quietly replace the missing Bitcoin using future profits. It seemed reasonable. They would earn the money back through trading fees and replenish the missing funds. No one would ever know. It was the first of many decisions that would eventually cost him everything. But more importantly, it was exactly what the real thieves were counting on. Because while Mark was learning to run an exchange, someone else was learning to rob it. And they were just getting started. This theft wasn't the one that would bring down Mt. Gox. No, that theft would be significantly bigger. What Mark didn't know was that the February 2011 hack had been far more devastating than anyone realized. The attackers hadn't just stolen 80,000 bitcoins. They had gained access to something much more valuable: the wallet.dat file containing private keys to Mt. Gox's entire hot wallet system. In the digital world, private keys are everything. They're the secret codes that prove ownership of Bitcoin, like having someone's house keys, bank PIN, and signature all rolled into one. And now the thieves had them all. The attack began at 14:33:07 UTC on September 11th, 2011. Not with explosions or dramatic server breaches, but with a single line of malicious code that changed everything. Every Bitcoin that entered Mt. Gox's hot wallet was now being automatically redirected to addresses controlled by invisible thieves. For 3 years, as Bitcoin's price exploded from under $2 to over $1,000, this digital phantom systematically drained 650,000 Bitcoin from the exchange. Mt. Gox's primitive accounting system continued showing customer balances as if nothing had happened. It was the perfect crime, theft so subtle that even the victims didn't know they were being robbed. Mark Karpeles was unknowingly running the world's most successful Bitcoin exchange on phantom funds. Every transaction, every trade, every deposit was being processed normally on the surface, but underneath, the foundation was rotting away, one Bitcoin at a time. Technical alerts fired constantly throughout this period, flashing warnings across computer screens that nobody was really watching. Warning, wallet balance mismatch detected. But Mark's overwhelmed team dismissed these as software glitches. They were too busy managing explosive growth to investigate why the numbers never added up. Meanwhile, the real thieves demonstrated patience that bordered on artistic. Rather than immediately cashing out and triggering suspicion, they methodically laundered their stolen fortune through an increasingly sophisticated network of shell addresses and proxy exchanges. They moved the coins slowly, carefully, like surgeons performing delicate operations on the blockchain. By January 2014, Mt. Gox was handling 70% of all Bitcoin trading worldwide. Mark appeared on magazine covers as the face of cryptocurrency's future. The company moved into expensive offices in Tokyo's financial district, hired dozens of employees, and projected profits in the tens of millions. None of it was real. When customers logged into their accounts, they saw Bitcoin balances backed by nothing but database entries. Mt. Gox had become the world's most elaborate Ponzi scheme, except Mark himself didn't know it. He was the unwitting frontman for a criminal empire he never realized he was building. The first public warning came from an anonymous security researcher who noticed irregularities in Mt. Gox's transaction patterns. "Something is fundamentally broken at Mt. Gox," the blog post read. "The numbers don't add up. They're either incompetent or hiding something massive." But the cryptocurrency community was drunk on Bitcoin's meteoric rise. At $800 per coin, early adopters were becoming millionaires overnight. Nobody wanted to hear bad news about the exchange that had made it all possible. Besides, Mt. Gox had survived hacks before. They were invincible. Then came February 7th, 2014, the day the music stopped. And when it did, the silence was deafening. Sarah Chen had been staring at her laptop screen for 6 hours straight, hitting the refresh button every few seconds. The numbers on her screen showed she was rich, at least on paper. Bitcoin had climbed past $900, and she wanted to cash out $50,000 to pay off her student loans and maybe buy a car. But when she tried to withdraw her Bitcoin from Mt. Gox, nothing happened. No confirmation email, no transaction ID, no error message, just silence, as if her request had been swallowed by a digital black hole. Across the globe, hundreds of thousands of users were experiencing the same digital nightmare. On February 7th, 2014, Mt. Gox froze all Bitcoin withdrawals without explanation or warning. Their official statement blamed transaction malleability, a known Bitcoin protocol quirk that had already been addressed by other major exchanges. Expert developers immediately saw through this technical smokescreen. Bitcoin developer Andreas Antonopoulos tweeted that the issue was not about malleability, but about missing coins. The community that had built Bitcoin from nothing wasn't fooled by corporate doublespeak. Days turned into weeks. Bitcoin's price crashed from $900 to $400 as panic spread through the cryptocurrency ecosystem. For many people, Mt. Gox represented their first interaction with digital money. Now, their faith was shattered, scattered across the internet in angry forum posts and desperate support tickets that would never be answered. Then Mark did something that destroyed any remaining credibility. He resigned from the Bitcoin Foundation's board and deleted Mt. Gox's entire Twitter history overnight. 5 years of updates, announcements, and customer interactions vanished without explanation. It was digital suicide, performed in front of the entire world. The real bombshell came on February 24th, when an internal document leaked on Reddit. Posted by an anonymous account, it contained a single PDF with a title that made every Bitcoin user's blood run cold. Crisis Strategy Draft Mt. Gox Situation. At this point, 744,000 Bitcoin are missing due to malleability-related theft, which went unnoticed for several years, the document read. The reality is that Mt. Gox can go bankrupt at any moment. 744,000 missing Bitcoins. Nearly 7% of all Bitcoins in existence had vanished from Mt. Gox's accounts. At 2014 prices, this represented $350 million in stolen cryptocurrency. However, as Bitcoin's value soared over the following decade, reaching over $107,000 per coin today, those missing coins are now worth nearly $80.3 billion. Within hours, Mt. Gox's offices were surrounded by angry customers demanding answers. Protesters held signs reading, "Where's our money?" and "Karpeles equals criminal." Death threats flooded social media. The man who had promised to revolutionize money had become the most hated person in cryptocurrency. Colin Burgess flew from London to Tokyo to confront Mark face-to-face, documenting his journey in a video that would go viral. "They've seemed to have just taken people's money," he said, outside Mt. Gox's empty offices. "I'm pretty annoyed about that, so I thought I'd come here." But Mark Karpeles had already disappeared into the shadows of Tokyo, leaving behind only questions and empty promises. The real thieves, however, were just getting started. They had stolen the money, but now they needed to clean it. And for that, they would need help from some very dangerous people. If you're finding this story as mind-blowing as I am, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Hey, sorry to interrupt your video, but I've got a quick question. Are you interested in building a career in ethical hacking? We've partnered with EC Council to bring you the Certified Ethical Hacker, or CEH Masterclass, and it's the perfect place to start. In this course, you'll learn step-by-step how to think and act like a hacker so you can protect organizations from cyber threats. You'll gain hands-on experience with industry-standard hacking tools such as Nmap, Wireshark, Metasploit, Burp Suite, John the Ripper, Nikto, AirCrackNG, and many others. Master ethical hacking with AI-driven techniques to enhance your skills and always stay a step ahead. You'll explore techniques used in footprinting, scanning, enumeration, system hacking, malware analysis, sniffing, social engineering, and more. You'll also dive into advanced topics like web application attacks, wireless network security, cryptography, cloud security, and penetration testing methodology. Everything you need to pass the CEH certification exam and become a skilled ethical hacker. The CEH certification is a globally respected credential that validates your ability to identify and fix security vulnerabilities in networks and systems. It's ideal for anyone looking to become an ethical hacker, penetration tester, security analyst, or cybersecurity consultant. Cybersecurity is one of the fastest growing fields in tech, and ethical hackers are in huge demand. In fact, according to EC Council, the demand for ethical hackers has grown by over 40% in the past year alone, with penetration testing jobs being among the top 5 fastest growing roles in cybersecurity. Organizations across finance, healthcare, government, and tech are actively hiring CEH certified professionals to help defend against cyber threats. CEH certified professionals earn anywhere from $95,000 to $150,000 US per year, and experienced professionals with advanced skills can earn $160,000 to over $200,000 annually, according to Glassdoor, PayScale, and CyberSeek. If you're ready to launch a high-impact, high-paying career in cybersecurity, this course is for you. We placed a link to the CEH course in the description area of this video. Enroll today and take the first step toward becoming a certified ethical hacker. Now, back to the video. In a nondescript office building in San Francisco, blockchain analyst Sarah Michaeljohn was attempting something that had never been done before: tracking stolen Bitcoin through the public ledger that recorded every transaction in cryptocurrency history. She was hunting ghosts in the machine, following digital footprints that most people couldn't even see. Unlike cash, which leaves no trail when stolen, Bitcoin transactions are permanently etched into an immutable digital record. Every movement, every split, every merge was documented forever on the blockchain. The challenge was connecting those cryptographic addresses to real-world identities. Every Bitcoin transaction is like a breadcrumb, Michaeljohn would explain to her team. The question is whether you can follow enough breadcrumbs to find where the trail leads. Working with data from Mt. Gox's bankruptcy trustees, she began mapping the flow of stolen funds with forensic precision. What she discovered challenged everything investigators thought they knew about the theft. This wasn't the work of some lone hacker operating from his parents' basement. The missing Bitcoin hadn't been stolen in one dramatic heist. Instead, they had been systematically drained through an automated system that operated for 3 years without detection. Starting in September 2011, every Bitcoin that entered Mt. Gox's addresses was immediately redirected to a network of unknown wallets. But here's where the trail got interesting. A massive portion of the stolen Bitcoin was flowing into a mysterious exchange called Bitcoin E. The name meant nothing to most people, but to those who understood the dark side of cryptocurrency, it was infamous. What Sarah discovered next would blow the case wide open. The stolen funds weren't just being laundered through Bitcoin E, they were being controlled by it. But to understand how that was possible, we need to enter the shadowy world of criminal cryptocurrency exchanges. Bitcoin E operated like Mt. Gox's evil twin, hidden in the digital shadows where legitimate businesses feared to tread. While Mt. Gox tried to work with banks and follow financial regulations, Bitcoin E deliberately courted the criminal market with open arms. No identity verification, no transaction monitoring, no cooperation with law enforcement subpoenas. It was a place where dirty money could become clean money with just a few mouse clicks. Drug dealers from the Silk Road darknet market used Bitcoin E to convert Bitcoin into cash, transforming their digital drug profits into real-world wealth. Ransomware operators laundered their extortion payments through their servers, washing the digital blood money until it sparkled. Hackers from around the world treated it as their personal money-washing service, a digital laundromat that never asked questions. The exchange's management was completely anonymous, hidden behind layers of corporate shells and proxy services. Website registration traced back to shell companies in Singapore, France, and New Zealand. Phone numbers led to dead ends. Even the server's physical location was hidden behind multiple layers of proxy services. For US investigators, Bitcoin E represented everything wrong with unregulated cryptocurrency exchanges. It was a black hole where stolen money disappeared forever, beyond the reach of traditional law enforcement. They could subpoena banks, freeze accounts, and pressure companies. But Bitcoin E existed in a lawless digital frontier where American badges meant nothing. However, that would all change when 2 federal agents got caught stealing Bitcoin themselves, and their capture would provide the key to unlocking the entire Mt. Gox mystery. DEA agent Carl Force and Secret Service agent Sean Bridges were supposed to be investigating the Silk Road darknet marketplace, bringing justice to the digital drug dealers who were poisoning America's youth. Instead, they had been stealing Bitcoin and laundering it through Bitcoin E, becoming the very criminals they were sworn to catch. Force alone had pocketed over $700,000 in cryptocurrency during the investigation. Bridges had stolen nearly 2,000 Bitcoin worth $350,000. Both men thought they were untouchable because their stolen funds had disappeared into Bitcoin E's anonymous system. They figured the feds would never be able to trace cryptocurrency through the blockchain. They were wrong. IRS investigator Tigran Gambarian spent months manually tracing the agent's stolen Bitcoin through the blockchain, following each transaction by hand through the digital maze. His detective work, conducted entirely without automated tools, proved that both men were guilty of the same crimes they were investigating. But more importantly, it demonstrated that Bitcoin E could be penetrated. If Tigran could trace stolen FBI Bitcoin to the exchange, he could trace Mt. Gox's stolen Bitcoin there too. Working with the Department of Justice, Tigran obtained legal authorization to secretly copy Bitcoin E's server data. The exchange thought it was untouchable, hidden behind Russian anonymity and cryptocurrency complexity. What they found inside would crack the Mt. Gox case wide open. However, the breakthrough didn't come from complex analysis or sophisticated software. It came from something much simpler: a username and a very human mistake. The breakthrough came at 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday night when Tigran discovered something that made him immediately call his supervisor, despite the late hour. The IP address trading Mt. Gox's stolen Bitcoin on Bitcoin E matched one of the exchange's own administrator accounts. The person liquidating Mt. Gox's missing fortune wasn't just using Bitcoin E to launder money. He was one of its operators. Could there be a more perfect crime? Steal Bitcoin from one exchange, then launder it through your own exchange while collecting fees on both ends. The administrator's username was WME, 3 letters that potentially represented the biggest cryptocurrency criminal in history. But usernames are just letters on a screen until you can connect them to real flesh and blood people. WME had made a crucial mistake years earlier, the kind of error that brings down even the most careful criminals. In 2012, he had posted on a Bitcoin forum complaining about being scammed by another exchange. Furious about his stolen coins, he had uploaded screenshots of email conversations and legal documents to prove his case. While he had carefully blacked out most identifying information, he had overlooked one crucial detail. His real name was clearly visible on attorney correspondence. Just like that, years of careful operational security were undone by a moment of anger. Alexander Vinnik. Now, investigators had a face to match the username. Background checks revealed that the 36-year-old Russian had previous arrests for credit card fraud and computer intrusion. He lived comfortably in St. Petersburg, running a business called WME Capital Management, while allegedly operating one of the world's largest money laundering operations. But as a Russian citizen living in Russia, Vinnik was effectively beyond their reach. The United States and Russia weren't exactly cooperating on law enforcement matters. All they could do was wait and hope he would eventually travel somewhere they could arrest him. For 3 years, they waited and watched, monitoring his every digital move. And then, in the summer of 2017, they got the break they had been praying for. July 2017. Intelligence indicated that Alexander Vinnik had booked a family vacation to Greece, a country with strong extradition treaties to the United States. He was traveling with his wife Elena and their 2 young children to a luxury resort in Halkidiki. completely unaware that his digital footprints had been traced back to the real world. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for. After years of watching him from afar, they finally had him within reach. July 25th started as a perfect Mediterranean morning, the kind of day that makes you forget about the troubles of the world. Families splashed in turquoise waters while hotel staff served fresh seafood and local wine. Alexander Vinnick applied sunscreen to his children's backs and settled into beach chair number 17 with a book, probably thinking about nothing more serious than lunch plans. He had no idea that Greek special forces were positioning themselves around the resort, moving through the crowds like invisible hunters. The operation had been planned for months, coordinated between multiple countries and law enforcement agencies. At 11:30 a.m. local time, coordinated law enforcement operations began simultaneously across 3 continents. FBI agents in Pittsburgh seized Bitcoin E's servers, shutting down the exchange permanently. Europol investigators raided shell company offices in France and Singapore. And on that peaceful Greek beach, police moved towards Sunbed 17. The arrest was swift and professional. One moment, Vinnick was enjoying a family vacation. The next, he was in handcuffs while his wife and children watched in confusion and terror. His 6-year-old daughter started crying, not understanding why strangers were taking her father away. Within hours, news of the arrest dominated cryptocurrency headlines worldwide. After 6 years of investigation into the Mt. Gox theft, law enforcement finally had their prime suspect. The ghost in the machine had been given a face, a name, and a pair of handcuffs. But for Alexander Vinnick, this was just the beginning of a nightmare that would cost him everything he held dear. Alexander Vinnick's arrest triggered an unprecedented international custody battle that would make legal history. The United States wanted him for laundering $4 billion through Bitcoin E. Russia demanded his return, claiming he was a victim of political persecution. France filed separate charges related to ransomware operations. 3 different countries, 3 different legal systems, 3 different sets of charges. And caught in the middle was a man who claimed he was just a technician, not a criminal mastermind. For 3 years, Vinnick remained in Greek detention facilities while lawyers argued over his fate. His conditions deteriorated as he went on hunger strikes, hoping to pressure authorities into sending him back to Russia. Multiple assassination attempts were made against him by fellow inmates, raising questions about who might want him silenced. The worst blow came in November 2018, when his wife Elena was diagnosed with brain cancer. Despite desperate pleas from his legal team, Greek authorities refused to allow Vinnick to attend her funeral when she died at age 34. His children, now orphaned for all practical purposes, were left to grow up without either parent. 88 days, Vinnick said weekly in a detention center video, referring to his hunger strike. Still no answer to my petitions. The man who allegedly controlled billions in cryptocurrency looked frail and broken, a shadow of his former self. The man accused of stealing nearly $80.3 billion had lost everything that mattered to him. His freedom, his wife, his children, his health, all sacrificed on the altar of international legal politics. In August 2022, Alexander Vinnick was finally extradited to the United States, where he now faces 21 federal charges that could result in 55 years behind bars. At age 43, it's essentially a life sentence, but the investigation wasn't over. In 2023, U.S. authorities announced indictments against 2 additional suspects, Alexei Bilyuchenko and Alexander Werner, accused of being Vinnick's partners in both the Mt. Gox theft and the Bitcoin E operation. The trio had allegedly worked together to pull off the greatest digital heist in history. According to intelligence reports, Bilyuchenko had been vacationing at a different Greek resort when Vinnick was arrested. Upon hearing the news, he allegedly smashed his laptop, threw it into the Mediterranean, and fled back to Moscow on the first available flight. Today, both men remain fugitives, likely protected by Russian authorities who have no interest in extraditing cybercriminals to face American justice. For the hundreds of thousands of people who lost money in Mt. Gox's collapse, the story has an unexpected twist. In 2014, Mark Karpeles recovered 200,000 of the missing bitcoins in an old, overlooked wallet. Today, those coins are worth over $21.6 billion, a staggering figure that now exceeds the exchange's entire value at the time of its collapse. After 14 years of legal proceedings, Mt. Gox's creditors finally began receiving their money back in 2024. "It could have been paid back to me," Mark reflected in a recent interview. "However, I helped make sure it wouldn't happen." He chose to return Bitcoin to creditors rather than keep the appreciated value for himself. Japanese courts ultimately acquitted Mark of most charges, a remarkable outcome given Japan's 99.8% conviction rate. Today, he runs a small IT consulting business in Tokyo, staying far away from cryptocurrency and the digital world that destroyed his life. As for the missing fortune stolen from Mt. Gox, almost all the funds were sold off as quickly as they were taken, largely before Bitcoin ever appreciated to any substantial value. It's estimated that they only pocketed around $20 million, a mere drop in the bucket compared to the staggering $80.3 billion these coins could fetch at today's prices. Alexander Vinnik was extradited to the United States in August 2022, but was returned to Russia in February 2025 as part of a prisoner swap. His alleged co-conspirators remain free in Russia, beyond the reach of international law. The digital empire they built has crumbled, but the impact of their crimes continues to ripple through the cryptocurrency world. The nearly $80.3 billion in current Bitcoin value stolen from Mt. Gox represents just the beginning of cryptocurrency's criminal evolution. New exchanges continue to be hacked, users continue to lose funds, and sophisticated criminals continue to exploit the borderless nature of digital money. The technology that promised to democratize finance has also democratized crime on a global scale. But the tools for catching them have evolved too. Blockchain analysis companies like Chain Analysis can now trace cryptocurrency transactions with forensic precision that would have been impossible during Mt. Gox's heyday. International cooperation between law enforcement agencies has improved dramatically. The digital trails that criminals leave behind grow more detailed every year. "The ultimate disaster there was surprising even to me," Jed McCaleb reflected about Mt. Gox's collapse, "that he basically had this cold wallet that was drained over a couple of years and he lost like 650,000 Bitcoin. That is insane." The man who created Mt. Gox still struggles to comprehend the magnitude of what his simple card trading website became. Somewhere in the code that powers every Bitcoin transaction, new ghosts are already learning to steal digital gold. They study the mistakes of those who came before, building better tools and stronger defenses. The hunt for the Mt. Gox hackers may be over, but the war between cryptocurrency criminals and those who pursue them has only just begun. In this digital Wild West, every transaction leaves a permanent scar on the blockchain, and eventually, all ghosts become visible. The question isn't whether the next Alexander Vinnik will be caught. The question is how much damage they'll do before someone traces their digital footprints back to another beach chair in another country, waiting for the handcuffs to click. The hunt continues today, because in the end, every criminal makes a mistake. Every ghost leaves a trail, and every crime, no matter how sophisticated, eventually meets its match in human determination and the inexorable march of justice. But here's what keeps investigators awake at night. What if the next heist makes Mt. Gox look like pocket change? What if the criminals are already inside the systems we trust most? What do you think? Are we winning the fight against crypto crime, or are the criminals always one step ahead? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want more stories like this that pull back the curtain on the digital underworld, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, the next story will blow your mind even more than this one.